Alright, the real-life Yandere girl, the strange case of Yuka Takoka.
She was a sweet, soft-spoken young woman.
Yeah.
Nobody would have expected her to do what she did. My
Honestly,
name
I
is
think I
Adrian,
might have
and
saw the
welcome
other
back
one
to another
too.
espresso case by Coffeehouse Crime.
I didn't
Lesson
think I
known
may
solved
have
and
saw the
unsolved
other one
cases
too.
in less than 10 minutes. Now this case is a bizarre one, not the type I'd usually cover. Today we're looking at the case of Yuka Takeoke and her victim Phoenix Luna. She's considered to
That's
be
how
a
you say
real-life
that.
yandere
Okay.
in Japan. I'll cover that definition in a moment.
Yeah,
Alright, I hope you're ready.
I know we haven't
This
seen
is
this
the
one.
case of Yuka Takeoke.
I just poured up some chocolate milk. Because I haven't had anything to drink yet.
Our short story starts in Tokyo, Japan. It was October 2018, and 21-year-old Yuka Takeoki resided in Shinjuku City. Shinjuku is a special district in Tokyo, known for its buzzing clubs, karaoke rooms, and upscale restaurants, all of them shrouded by skyscrapers. Yuka was living an alternate life, or at least by Western standards.
I heard
She dropped out of
something about this
university at
story
the age of
before.
19 to become the manager of a hostess club in Shinjuku. Hostess clubs are popular in the nightlife industry of East Asian countries, typically hiring female employees to serve drinks and provide thoughtful conversation to male customers. And Yuka was also a fan of anime, a style of Japanese animation typically aimed for both adults and children. She was so much of a fan, in fact, that she would often post pictures of herself dressing up and cosplaying as some of her favourite characters on her Twitter and Instagram pages, still up to this date. She was a quietly shy individual, the type of person who initially wouldn't say much, but grew confidence the more she knew you. Generally laid back and sweet, not the type you'd expect any problems from. Back to anime. One of her favourite types of cosplays was of yandere characters, a specific type of personality.
Yeah, there's
Yanderes
Toga.
are generally kind, nurturing and lovable women, ones of which that eventually turn violent and possessive over a love interest. Can you see where this is going? In October that year, while still working at a hostess bar, she met a 20-year-old man named Phoenix Luna.
Yeah, I heard
He was
about
also
this,
a host at a nearby host bar called Fusion Nightclub. Host bars are the same as hostess bars, just hiring male employees or female customers. And Phoenix Luna was in a game of his own. He was very popular amongst the hosts in Shinjuku, and often was in the bar's leaderboards, a lot of his female patrons often returning for his bartending services. Now, just to point out, this is all safe for work. Host bars and hostess bars are strictly PG. At least officially. Other than having things in common, Yuka and Phoenix were in the same industry.
Is your mom now?
They understood each other well from a professional point of view.
Her.
And with their late night work schedules matching, it meant that they had a lot of time out of working hours to connect as friends. It was due to these reasons over the following weeks and months that the two grew closer to each other, and eventually started dating. The relationship wasn't all fine and dandy though. Although the matching hours gave them more time to see each other, it also created some tension between the two. With Yuka and Phoenix both working in the same industry, one designed to generate money through flirting, it posed and bared a risk for the Green Devil: jealousy. And oh boy, did that work for Yuka. Over the following months, she grew more and more possessive over him, often monitoring his whereabouts and even checking on his phone when he wasn't looking. She grew so ever increasingly jealous over Phoenix that eventually she outright bought his services from the bar, paying over $9,000 a month just so he wouldn't see any other women. A little bit strange, don't you think? Fast forward, and it is now May the 23rd, 2019, a few months after the two had started dating. Things were going pretty well for the two. That's a lot of money. And despite a few tensions here and there, the two were happy. Yuka was still managing the hostess bar, and business was solid. She'd taken a couple days off of work to sort some things out in the apartment. She'd asked Phoenix to drop by her house to help with some DIY, in which he agreed. He'd arrived at her home much later than expected though. It was a very long shift at the bar that night, and when he got in he was exhausted. He asked Yuka if he could run himself a bath to relax, in which she agreed. One he got into, and then fell asleep in. During that time though, Yuka had once again snooped through her boyfriend's phone, and while doing so she found a few photos of him with another woman. She didn't
Oh
know
my
who she
gosh.
was, and it couldn't be a client because she'd bought him out. This discovery enraged Yuka. She'd noticed for the last couple days that he'd been distant with her. She put that together with these photos and took it as evidence that he was
Is
cheating
that
on
the
her.
job? No, actually,
So how
that
would you
is the
confront a
job.
partner if you were suspicious over a picture? Discuss any problems in the relationship? Ask if everything's okay?
That's literally just their job.
Not for Yuka. That's not how she rolled. After waking up in the bath, Phoenix put on some underwear. He then crept into the bedroom and slid into the bed, trying not to wake Yuka, who was supposedly already asleep. And because he was so already exhausted from all of his shifts the last few days, he passed out pretty much immediately. Some time had passed when all of a sudden Phoenix felt an uncomfortable feeling coming from his stomach.
Oh,
He looked down, and that's when he saw a knife lodged into his abdomen. Waking up in surprise and terror, he looked back up to see Yuka arched over him. Is this real? Am I dreaming? He thought. Running on pure adrenaline, he shoved her off the bed and ran out the room. Yuka chased Phoenix, grabbing him as he left the front door. Him being taller though, he was stronger and pushed her away as he reached the elevator. By now, Phoenix was losing a lot of blood. The elevator door was closing, and it was heading towards the ground floor. And as the elevator door opened up to the lobby, he lunged forward, almost to safety, and then lost consciousness. Yuka had caught up with Phoenix. He lay collapsed on the floor of the hotel lobby, blood pooling around his body. By now, passers-by had noticed the horrific scene unfolding, and the police, they'd called them immediately. But Yuka, she wouldn't leave his side. She just sat there next to his body, and people were too scared to get close to them in case she did something back. And the following picture is what has made this case notorious. When they got there, police found Yuka sat next to his body, drenched in his blood, casually smoking a cigarette while on the phone to her friend. In the time it had taken police to get there, she'd also written a letter with his blood, repeatedly saying "I love you" over and over and over again. Tokyo Metropolitan Police apprehended Yuka immediately. They would find the letter that she wrote along with the knife she'd used to stab Phoenix in her apartment. When the officer had asked her why she did it, she replied with, "I was sad and seeking to die. I thought that if I kill him, I could be with him. I thought that expressions such as 'I like you' and 'I would like to be with you' would become reality if we both died." Numerous witnesses watched as police escorted Yuka into the back of their vehicle, and when she got in there, she was smiling. And as for the victim, Phoenix Luna, he was still alive, but only barely. Following the speed in which police and paramedics had got to the apartments, he had not yet passed from his injuries. He was transported to a local hospital where he remained in critical condition, with only a 20% chance to survive.
Did he live?
But on July the 1st, an entire month after he was stabbed in the abdomen, to everyone's surprise, Phoenix Luna was alive and recovering. He tweeted friends and fans to say, "Sorry, I'm alive and back," before adding, "Since I was stabbed in the liver, I can't drink." Being a survivor of a horrific experience, Phoenix agreed to attending a local interview, and in that interview he refused to show any hate towards Yuka. When asked, he said that "I do not hold a grudge." He even pleaded with the judge to reduce her sentence. On Thursday the 5th of December 2019, the presiding judge sentenced Yuka to 3 years and 6 months for attempted murder. Did I get that right? Yep, 3 years and 6 months. On Thursday the 5th of December 2019, the presiding judge handed Yuka a prison term of 3 years and 6 months for attempted murder.
Wait,
Judge handed
when was this?
For attempted murder. Did I get that right? Yep, 3 years and 6 months. On Thursday the 5th of December 2019, the presiding judge handed Yuka a prison...
Wait, 2019, so like, she's just free right now. She's actually just free right now. That's crazy.
Term of 3 years and 6 months for attempted murder. Yuka and Phoenix previously had made a court settlement for her to pay him 5 million yen, the equivalent of $47,000 as a means to reduce her time behind bars. At her hearing, the court judge declared, "If possible, I want people to be able to lead a normal life rather than paying for their sins." And the story doesn't end there. Following Yuka's attempted murder
Wow.
and imprisonment, she grew an entire online community of fans, most of which are invested in anime culture that possess a deep admiration for her, hailing her as if she were a real-life Yandere. Her fans believed that she didn't need to be condemned for her actions, only rehabilitated. She even had a GoFundMe-style campaign raised for her, and while the campaign was shut down,
damn.
at the time she was receiving over $3,800 from 69 contributors, almost the amount needed to get her out of prison. Following Yuka's crime of attempted murder, she is now scheduled to be released from prison in May 2023.
Wow.
And that's the story of Yuka Takeoke. I feel really conflicted about this case. On one hand, I appreciate and admire Phoenix for not holding any grudges, but at the same time, attempted murder, 3.5 years. Really? What do you think about Yuka's sentence? Do you think it was enough? Or do you think she got the time she deserved? And what do you think about her fan base? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're there, let me know what you think about this case. Do you find these stories with slightly happier endings as interesting? Or do you prefer the cases to be a little bit more final? For the record, Tokyo and Japan in general is incredible. If you ever have the opportunity to visit, take it, you will not regret it. Thank you once again for watching this video today, folks. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care of each other. Goodbye.
Damn. Well, yeah, Gab, you're not wrong, really, because, like, as long as she can, like, change and not get that crazy over someone like that, like, I mean, she did do it for love. It's just, she very much did a wrong thing. She very much should not have done what she did. But, like, as long as she doesn't get like that, then it's fine, as long as she understands that, you know? So she understands that, but I don't know if you would change like that after 3 years. That's crazy, Gob. Alright. How a soda can solved a 40-year-old cold case. The story of Sylvia Quayle.
We all know it's possible for a cold case to one day come back in a breakthrough, but how about one which hasn't been solved in over 40 years? My name's Adrian,
Damn.
and welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime. Today we're looking at the case of Sylvia Quayle, who was found in 1981 deceased in her home, and how 40 years later, the mystery behind her killer would finally be solved. Now in this case, we're not just looking at the what happened, but we're also looking at the how. And just a quick one, if true crime and mystery is your kind of thing, I post on this channel once or twice a week.
I do like
so
true
if you
crime.
haven't yet, please consider making my day by subscribing to Coffeehouse Crime. Right then, here we go.
Alright, let's see this.
The year is 1981, the season is summer. We're in Cherry Hills Village in Colorado, and at the time, the city was called home to over 5,000 residents. And one of those residents, her name was Sylvia Quayle. Not a lot is known about Sylvia, or at least nothing that I could find, but she was born on the 23rd of September 1946. She grew up with her mother and father, and she has a younger sister, Jo. Sylvia was described to light up the room whenever she walked in, and it was known that she loved her younger sister very much. The date was August the 3rd, 1981. It had been a particularly hot day that Monday, with temperatures reaching almost 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Sylvia had finished work, and she was back home that night, relaxing with her feet up. She spoke to her younger sister just before 11 PM. Couldn't tell you what about, but everything was happy in the Quayle residence. The clock was ticking late in the evening though, and the two sisters, they had their own plans the following morning. So on that note, just after 11 PM, they both said goodnight to each other over the phone and headed on to bed. The next morning, Sylvia's father headed to the residence to pick her up for coffee. It was the usual morning habit they held together. When he arrived there, though, his life turned upside down.
Oh no.
He discovered her lifeless on the living room floor,
What
and
the
he
hell?
called the police immediately. Authorities stated that at some point during the night between August the 3rd and 4th, she had been assaulted before being strangled. She had wounds consistent with that by a knife, and she was shot through the temple.
Oh my
And
god.
shortly after, had succumbed to other injuries by an unknown suspect. Notes from law enforcement stated that the phone line to the property had been cut, and this suggested that the crime must have happened at least after 11 PM, after she'd finished talking to her sister. Notes also highlighted that the bug screen covering the window to Sylvia's bathroom had been ripped off of its hinges and put in a nearby patch of trees. This suggested that the bathroom window was the point of entry. The family and local residents were devastated, and despite a strong motivation to try and find the suspect, no strong leads ever came through. With it being the 1980s, forensic analysis was still in its junior years, and so with no theoretical suspects identified and all avenues of biological matching exhausted, the likelihood of solving this crime fast diminished.
True.
With enthusiasm to maybe solve this case one day in the future, police along with forensic analysts gathered up pieces of evidence and the crime scene and stored them all in a container, should any new technologies in the future help to one day solve this case. And with that, the case went cold.
I guess it did help in the future though, right?
2 years later, in 1983, law enforcement decided to look back at the case. Several years prior, while Sylvia was still alive, the Canadian Mounted Police were pioneering a new technology called alternate light sourcing. They were making use of argon iron lasers, but the technology was expensive, required bulky machines, and were impractical for use at crime scenes, so it was limited to the crime lab. By the time 1983 had come along, however, portable lasers began to appear in the marketplace. Their usefulness was still limited mostly to a single colour of light, but forensics were getting by. That's when investigators using alternate light source determined that a piece of the rug taken near the body contained potential foreign material. And that's why, 12 years later, in 1995, when the service was applicable, the rug was sent to the Central Bureau of Investigations for testing. It took some time for a DNA profile to be developed, but by the year 2000, the CBI had created a full profile matching the DNA that was found on the rug. This, however, didn't lead to any suspect. There was no one on the state's or the nation's DNA database with a matching profile. And this is where we see our biggest jump to the story. Because it wasn't until several years later when a prompt to Sylvia's case motivated an analyst to take that sequenced DNA and upload it to 2 different general open source websites, Family Tree DNA and GetMatch. Both of these sites are a lot more simple than what I've just said. Essentially, they give you a DNA kit, you give them back your DNA, and they then match that to what they've got in the database to see if you have any missing family. The new technology and idea, called genetic geology, is bold and open. Investigators are hoping to use the mysterious suspect's DNA with the online database in hopes to find a match. A different way of connecting a suspect to the traditional US national DNA database. And they got a match. The only problem was the DNA matched an entire family tree with over 3,300 people. I guess that's a little better than an entire country, right? Investigators got to work on the case straight away, but with so many possible suspects spanning almost every state in America, they had a lot of work to do. And it took a huge amount of effort to narrow down the suspect to just one. The background work required to this new kind of identification technology is extensive, and it includes using the matching DNA to look over all sorts of newspapers and public records, finding out about those people and who they're related to, and where they're from, and where they lived. And eventually all that work in time looked like it was going to pay off, because of the 3,300 suspects, they managed to whittle down to just one. That one set of DNA belonged to a man, and his name was David Anderson. David Anderson seems to have lived in the area of Colorado back in 1981, so the geography matched too. And the only sitch was that he'd moved by then. This would take detectives all the way over to Nebraska. Okay, fine, it's only one state away. But on January the 17th, 2021, detectives would drive to Nebraska to the property of David Anderson. They had to be careful though, because technically he was still an innocent man, and they also didn't want to alert his suspicions to what they were trying to do. They gathered evidence of the property using Google Maps and information from the local council, and after camping in their vehicle for 2 days, watched David put his usual trash into the bin. They retrieved the bin bag and its contents, and in its contents they would find 2 empty beer bottles and a can of Coca-Cola Vanilla. And while the beer bottles provided nothing, the Vanilla Coke can was able to provide genetic material. They sent the can in for analysis, and 11 days later, on January the 29th, 2021, results from the forensic laboratory came back. The DNA found on the rug from the crime scene in Sylvia's home matched the DNA of the Coke can. The analysis, pretty much confirming that David he was there on the day that Sylvia died. David Anderson was arrested on the 10th of February 2021 at his home in Nebraska. He has since returned to Colorado to face his charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder.
I can't imagine, as a father myself, of a young woman about this age, to have a morning like that.
As the case is so old now, David Anderson will be prosecuted under the laws that were in place back in 1981. This means if convicted, he's likely to be sentenced to life without parole. Not that this means much anymore. David, he is now over 60 years of age. Ironically, to keep this case straightforward, I kept out the fact that in 1983, police thought they'd solved this case.
Do you know what? That's actually crazy that, like, he's like 60 years old, right? And he's just gonna die in prison. Now. He's just going to die in prison. Like, because of one thing you did when you're like 20. That's crazy. But honestly, deserved. You're so blunt. I know I am.
When a drifter named Otis Elwood Toole confessed to Sylvia's murder. However, like his friend Henry Lee Lucas, Otis falsely confessed to several crimes at the time, and officials ultimately dropped the charge against him. And there we have it, 40 years. I wonder how long it took for him to feel safe that he was never going to be caught. How many years it took him until he stopped looking over his shoulder. It's fair to say that his crime didn't make him feel too guilty. I'm sure if he did, then he would have handed himself in years ago. So next time any of you out there that are thinking about committing a crime, maybe don't just think about how you might get caught now. You're going to have to pull out a crystal ball and think how you may get caught in 40 years too. Thank you so much for watching another espresso case of mine today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe, maybe even leave a like and drop a comment. A bit of a different case today, but I thought it was really interesting nevertheless. What did you think of it? Thanks once again folks, take it easy and look after each other, and I'll be seeing you real soon in the next one. Until then though, goodbye.
Damn.